Oh, hello, and welcome to the Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and today I have a very special guest with me, and can't wait for you to get to know Jon Konz, who is the founder of Catholic Ministry Professionals, but also he's just written a book that I think will be very helpful to you, regardless of whether or not you're involved in professional Catholic ministry. But if you're just trying to serve within your church or within your neighborhood or community, he has some wonderful things to share with us. But without further ado, Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, not at all. No, not at all. So, if you would take a moment and just kind of let our listeners know kind of a little bit about your background and where you are and what you're doing today.
Absolutely. My name is Jon Konz, and I'm located here in the Midwest. I'm in Iowa these days, but I grew up in Minnesota, worked in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for a number of years. Did some time in Chicago as well, working in ministry, and all of that time coming out of college at Briarcliff University, a little shout out there, with a degree in theology. And I started working in ministry, and it was when I started working in ministry that I really had a profound, um, I would say, a deeper conversion that
Mhm.
went from I grew up Catholic. I never doubted any of the things of the faith. I never left the faith, but I would say I was kind of a good enough Catholic. I showed up to
Mhm.
mass on Sundays, but then I also picked and chose the things that I really wanted to follow through on as far as the faith teaches. But it was when I started preaching the gospel that it became very concrete for me that Jesus is real, and that means something for the way that I live my life. And so, flash forward, it's about 15 years after college graduation. I've been in ministry this whole time in various capacities. First as a campus minister for a Catholic high school for grades 9 through 12, really doing youth ministry on campus there, and then in various parish ministry capacities, and in that time developed my skills as a worship leader, as a speaker, um, and also eventually got my MBA, a concentration in leadership. Because what I experienced was, after I'd been in ministry for a few years, you kind of use up the whole song and dance thing. You've used up a lot of
Mhm.
the tricks, and uh,
Yeah.
and I realized that even though I had a decent theology education, I could tell people about Jesus. I didn't know what it actually meant to grow a ministry, which is what I was
Mm,
asked to do after 3 years. Is say, well, you've been here for a while. We really want to see you take the reins on this ministry and grow it. And I just was like, I just had no idea what that meant. And so,
mhm.
I'm a problem solver by nature, and that kind of was the inspiration for me to start figuring out, what does this mean? I understand the concept of discipleship, but how do I disciple well? And then knowing that
Mhm.
I'm limited, how do I scale discipleship within the context of my ministry? Because I didn't like the feeling of knowing, yes, I'm investing in 5, 10, 15 young men intentionally, but I've also got 700 other students that I'm responsible for.
Right.
So what does that look like? And it's an ongoing process and a development, but that was really it started with me a desire, and I noticed, um, I guess, a reciprocal desire in a lot of people that I ministered with as well, that there was a desire to minister more, but also then not knowing how to do that in
Mhm.
just the whirlwind of the day to day of parish ministry, which is crazy. Most people who work in ministry, they're not just doing one job. They've got four or five
Mhm.
different areas or disciplines or ministries that they're responsible for, which
Yeah.
takes up their time, their intention. It all comes with different expectations. And so, how do
Mhm.
we manage all of that well so that when we show up at the day, we feel like we are making good on the Lord's call to bear fruit?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the greatest challenges I've found, and we were talking a little bit before we jumped on, is just kind of there's kind of two things that seem to happen, which is either people think they have to recreate the wheel, they don't know where resources are, they don't know where to get the help, or they are like, well, this is what's always been done. And so they just continue on that way, not knowing that no, there are better ways to do things, and seeking that out. So I think you kind of are leading us towards what it was that kind of prompted you to kind of start Catholic Ministry Professionals for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there was just a natural change. My wife finished her residency and went into practice, and that moved
Mm,
us into another state. And it was a natural breaking point from my previous career. And I just, what I experienced was that I had a lot of people that when I spoke to them, they got really inspired.
mhm,
They were like, yes, I want to do this. I don't know how. And of course, wanting myself to have the time to be able to support people, Catholic ministry professionals that are on the front lines in parish ministry, in schools. I wanted to create more time for that. So that was really the impetus. There was a natural kind of point where it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was leaving my parish high and dry and just
mhm,
quitting ministry. It was just the natural evolution of we're in this new place, new time, post COVID-19, right? So the pandemic
mhm,
time where now everybody knows the fact that we're having this meeting is amazing to me. Just,
mhm.
being hundreds of miles away from each other. And
Yeah.
so that just opens up the avenue to be able to serve people in a different capacity and in a different way. And the desire to start the ministry was because I saw an area where there was need for support
Mhm,
that when you look at the leadership structure of the church, it's not designed to support in that way. Our
mhm,
pastors, what I see it really as is leadership development for people who work in the church, which is
mhm,
something that our pastors are frankly too busy, and not trained. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just not what their
mhm,
training's in. It's something they're not trained to do. So to be able to come alongside and offer some of that, that was the beginning of the podcast, Catholic Ministry Professionals podcast, because it was a way for me to get my ideas. I'm an external
mhm,
processor. I have to get the ideas out of my head, and just after a couple of years of that, it's like, okay, I feel like I really know what I'm trying to say. I feel like I've kind of um, boiled down and distilled. I've read dozens of leadership books now, and I've distilled a lot of that and said, here are the really practical things a person can do. Because
mhm.
and that led then to writing the book, Pray, Plan, Lead. Because I
Right.
I'm one who, I pick up a book and I get, you get to a point where you feel like they really told you everything you needed to know in the first 50 pages, and
Mhm,
then after that it's just fluff and trying to exercise the issue over and over and turn it over again, and I don't have the patience for that a lot of times. So this book is just the first 50 pages. It's not
mhm,
long. Most people can read it in an evening and get started on
mhm.
doing work that changes lives, on transforming their parishes through their work that night.
Right. No, and that was what appealed to me very much about it. I had made mentions, I do this work, kind of right now, primarily within my parish, but then also have had, I think, similar conversations that you had with others of where it's just like, oh, I want to do this, but how do I do it? And, what am I supposed to be attentive to? Those kind of things. But you're absolutely right, distilling and capturing the essence of what we're supposed to be about and then implementing it is really the key because we don't have the time. And it's not because we're mismanaging our time, but usually, I look back and I'm sure you probably have watched some of the chosen episodes from the TV series. And when you look at how did Jesus have time to even hang out with people for 3 years, kind of thing. And we're inundated with that. And I think even as a person sitting in the pews, you are a little bit overwhelmed of you might get involved in something and you might want to see that to do better. So maybe it's something as simple as becoming an adorer at Eucharistic adoration and oh, you notice that there's more. We need more. We have slots to fill. And then it's like, well, how do I invite someone into that? How do I encourage them that no, they could do this, and then also being a mentor to them as they might step into that type of ministry. And most people don't know the first thing about what it is that should look like. And so again, your book was wonderful because you're giving me my why, but then you're giving me very practical steps that I can take in order to move forward. And so, what was it that helped you kind of distill down to the different things that you focused upon in your book?
Yeah, so I kind of broke it down to those three sections, right? Pray,
Hmm.
then plan, then lead. And the whole idea for that, those three things is, for if you go out in the business world, it's all economy based. It's all looking at the bottom line. It's like it has to make a profit. But it's slightly different. So you can't, there's not necessarily a direct application from all the great leadership books that are out there to how do we do this in the parish? Because for us, it actually has to start with that prayer. And
Mhm.
it's yes, you are called to bear fruit, but also the Lord is totally about your soul and you getting to heaven. And so our prayer has to be rock solid. And we would, I think it would blow our minds if we were able to sit down in a room with Catholic ministry professionals, a whole group of them, and in a place where they feel safe, they can be honest and to say, what does your prayer life look like?
Mhm.
And I think we would be shocked, ashamed, maybe, um, to find out how poor our prayer lives are, even
Mhm.
as Catholic ministry professionals who know that that's like the bedrock of
Right.
fruitful ministry. It's the bedrock of a fruitful life is that
Mhm.
prayer, that time with the Lord. And so I knew that like no matter what I do, I can't separate it from that. Jean Baptiste Chotard has that great book. Oh,
Mhm.
now I'm not going to get the
Soul of the
title of it.
apostolate.
Soul of the Apostolate. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
mean, he just makes it very clear. Like I doubled down on this at the end of the book as well, as like if you do everything else wrong, just become a saint, and you will see that
Mhm.
that will transform your parish. So that had to be the absolute foundation, was that prayer. So that
Mhm.
to me was non-negotiable. That seems like that needs to be the first part. And that was my experience in ministry too. I
Yeah.
tried a lot of tactics when I first started in
Yeah.
ministry, and
Mhm.
they all fell flat. It didn't do anything. I'd watch all the Chris Stefanik and Mart Hart videos and try to regurgitate what they were saying, and
Mhm.
it was empty, because and the kids can smell BS a mile away, and so
Yep.
they knew that it was a shallow attempt at ministry on my part.
Mhm.
But when I stopped doing that, because I had my conversion, and I stopped trying to just do that thing and try to be a cool hip youth minister, and I started praying for the men there. I'd show up before the event started, and I would pray for them intentionally, and then I would just be with them. It Then it started to flourish and it started to grow. So that
Mhm.
prayer, again, that's absolutely foundational.
Yeah.
And that prayer for me is not just, are you saying enough Our Fathers, your Hail Marys, are you doing all your devotions? That the prayer, we often forget, has to be actionable.
Mhm.
St. Francis de Sales, in his Introduction to the Devout Life, again and again and again, it's like, don't just pray, change, right? This is repentance, but repentance doesn't
Mhm.
sound very fun, versus, having a resolution to act. And that's really central to St. Francis de Sales spirituality. So I really tried to build in this impulse that it's not just about being with Jesus, it's about being with Jesus with the intent to change, to become like him, and to carry
Mhm.
him out into the world. So helping them to have some process for building a resolution from prayer, and then that leads into more the business world, so that you're not just doing random initiatives or trying to do a new ministry, but
Mhm.
you are discerning from God, applying it to your heart, and then moving it out into your ministry that he has called you into. And so that from that, then it becomes the foundation and the basis where, when you have to do all these other things in the plan section, and you're choosing to step into that level of leadership in your parish and in your ministry that you are called to, that you have not just this idea in your head, not just this desire in your heart, but the knowledge that this thing we're trying to do comes from the heart of God. And then that gives
Mhm.
you the strength, it gives you the stamina, it gives you the energy, it gives you all of that behind your efforts, so that it's not just you working, but it is God working through you. And when you do that, it will transform your entire experience of your
Mhm.
ministry. And I think of all the, we know the burnt out people that we see at our meetings, and
Mhm.
they're just complaining about the people that they have to serve.
Right.
And it transforms that into an act of love for those people, which transforms your heart, and it breathes life and allows you to live out that Christian charity that we are called to in our ministries.
Mm.
And then from there, that plan section, really, it's a process for taking that discernment, giving it voice, and then really putting it into practice, as well as you mentioned before, we're all too busy to do this.
Mhm.
It gives really practical ways, and what for me was groundbreaking was how I can work well, so that my entire day isn't taken up with the maintenance of my work,
Mhm.
but I'm creating time for the mission. I really think that's important, to make the stuff that you know you're going to have to do every week, some of that can be
Right.
automated, some of that can be delegated. Either way, it's all predictable. So it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be something that monopolizes your time. You can make it more predictable so that you have more time to be intentional about building the mission of the church.
Mhm.
And then from there, I really wanted to wrap it up with just a solid of understanding of what it means to lead in a way that, I think we get so wrapped up with the idea that we're supposed to be humble that we don't want to lead, but we're all
Right.
called to be Christ.
Mhm.
And you do that by serving, but that's also servant leadership. And when
Mhm.
so I tried to nuance leadership in a way that was palatable for those
Mhm.
who find that to be an ugly concept of
Mhm.
choosing to take this on. But again, um, there's a certain level of magnanimity which is that is a virtue, like
Yeah.
greatness of soul, and we need
Mhm.
to be reinvigorated by our call to be great, to be that shining light on the hill that draws people to Christ. But you can't do that if you cover yourself up in false humility all the time. So you have to be willing to step out and to lead in the capacity that he has called you to.
Yeah. Pusillanimity, is that opposite of magnanimity.
Such a beautiful
Uh,
word, yeah.
it is, and the first time I came across it, it's that idea of we are making ourselves less than we are, which is pretty much, not to use, profane language, but we're pretty much giving the finger to God when we go, no, I'm not worthy, of where it's like, no, I'm not going to respond to what you're asking of me. And rather, because we say, no, I can't, I don't know, etc., and we forget that God always calls the unqualified. Almost invariably, he's not calling the person who has the great education or the, whatever, the resources that we all think somebody should have. But I do want to point out, the fact of it does echo your pray, plan, and lead does echo our baptismal call, being priests, prophets, and kings. And so I thought that was beautiful that it was building upon that reality, and anyone is called to this. Within the Cursillo movement, one of the things that happens during that 3 day experience living their Cursillo is there's a talk specifically about leadership. And it's the fact of we are called to lead within our homes, within our neighborhoods, within our parishes, in whatever way Christ wants us to, being Him, for others. But I'm intrigued not just with the practicalities here, but why is it that you believe that this work is so important to be doing now? What is it that you see going on kind of in larger church, that really makes you go, hey, we need to be doing this work right now?
Hmm. Yeah, so for me, with just the landscape of ministry as I see it, we're at a new time. We now have, when my mom was a DRE all while I was growing up, and she got all of the certificates that the diocese made her get and all that stuff to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's transitioned to now where we don't just have certificates, we have professional degrees. We have people who are
Mm-hmm.
coming out and they're professionally trained to do these jobs in a sense, which means that it's moved from a mostly volunteer capacity to a Catholic, like a professional Catholic
Mm-hmm.
ministry, and to me that means that it's elevated the standard.
Mm-hmm.
That and if we want that to be the case, then we need to rise to that standard. We need to be able to work at that level. And as a tithing, okay, so I've got a million ideas around that, but
Right.
what I see is that we now have an army of professionally trained people in the parishes that are working, and that does a few things. One, the, I guess, lack of leadership that we've experienced, from a church that is designed with the priest at the head leading the whole parish.
Mm-hmm.
Our priests get these great degrees, this great training to be a pastor, but then they're made a CEO and they don't understand how that works.
Right.
And so that transition has been made now, though, where we have enough lay professionals that the priest can not step out of his role of leadership, but he can begin to
Mm-hmm.
delegate. He can begin to share that leadership with people who do have the training to do
Mm-hmm.
these things. And as that conversation happens, there needs to be some sort of development, some sort of process for growth, that if the priest can't lead it, at least the individual can lead it for themselves. And that's
Mm,
something I feel very convicted of, is that we all need to rise to that. I'm a tithing member of my parish,
mhm.
and I know that my money goes to pay the professionals who work there.
Right.
And so they have an obligation to me to bear good fruit. It's the
Mm,
same thing at our Catholic school. I have the opportunity to speak to the principal and to the pastor and all that stuff. And one of the things I said to them is, I'm paying your salary. If I'm sending my kids here and they're not being discipled in the process, then this shouldn't be a thing. Like, if I didn't think you were going to disciple them, I wouldn't send my kids here. Like, there's an expectation there, and that means we need to rise to that as well as Catholic ministry professionals. And that shouldn't be scary, but
mm,
it is often scary when we think about how there is a justification. If you work if you're getting paid $50,000 a year and you're a
mm.
youth minister and you're only meeting with a handful of kids every week, that's not a good trade-off.
Right.
So there is a need that, like, when you are a professional, you do need to be able to justify the paycheck that you receive. You do
Mhm.
need to be able to justify that the work that you're doing, and the old saying was, well, if just one soul is changed, it was all worth it. And yes, yes, but there's a difference between your call to evangelize that one soul and your job that you were hired to do. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're all called to evangelize. We're all called to disciple, but that's not dependent on whether or not you work in a parish. When
Right.
you work in a parish, you're really called to scale discipleship and evangelization.
Mhm.
You are that engine, that catalyst for it. And so it just means we need to retool our thinking. And I see that this work is a necessary part of that conversation, so that people who have been working in one mode of ministry the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that they can level up, so to speak. We can move into this
Mhm.
new area. And the reason I want it, the reason this is important to me, is because I've seen the stats and the numbers. I've seen, we know that we have about a 90% attrition rate in the Catholic Church, and that's unacceptable.
Mhm.
It's unacceptable. Those of us who have worked in ministry, and myself included, I've been in ministry for 15 years. We should be embarrassed by that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but not to the point where we become depressed and walk away and disillusioned, but that we fully enter into the power of the priest, prophet, and king that we've been
Mhm.
baptized in, that we step fully into that, and we recognize the God who's at the front of that, and we let him speak into our hearts so that he can lead that change through us and our work in the church.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I know that there are a lot of apostolates that are out there now, kind of doing renewal work in the church. What do you think makes your approach different from others?
Yeah, I love that you asked that. I would say the main difference is, I mean, a lot of the apostolates that I see are really aimed at the entire team being on board to transform the parish.
Mhm.
And my experience is that that is not the case. You have to have the pastor on board if you want, like, this team-wide, parish-wide renewal to happen. It has to start from the pastor so he can enforce it on the way down. And the unfortunate thing is that oftentimes, even if that's the case where the pastor is saying it, you have one or two people that are just going to fight it tooth and nail no matter what they do.
Right.
And in most cases, the pastor isn't going to be willing to say, well, this person has to go. Because at the end
Mhm.
of the day, if you really want the team to be on board, there has to be a line where you say, this is where we're going. And if you're not going here with us, then
Yep.
leave.
Mhm.
Um, and that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. My
Yeah.
approach is different because I genuinely believe the path forward is going to be for those individuals who feel called, who have that fire burning in their belly, their hearts for this change. My goal is to give that individual everything that they need to work that change, because
Mhm.
I don't believe you have to have your whole team on board in order to transform your parish through your work. But I do believe you need to have a plan. I think you need to have a prayer life and have a plan, and then you have to intentionally lead that direction. And when you do that, then you can work change from inside. And to me, it's more sustainable that way. To
Mhm.
say, I can control what I can control. I'm going to do excellent ministry, and I'm going to allow that to grow and to bear fruit. Because I might not be able to convince my pastor that we need to bring John in to do a workshop for our team. I might not be able to convince a pastor to bring Christina in to do a workshop for our
Mhm.
team. But I myself, I can transform my parish through my work.
Mhm.
And it's something that's more attainable. And when we look at it that way, we don't go, oh, I'll never be able to get them on board. But I can go, but I can do this thing. I can
Mhm.
pray, I can discern, and I can follow God with wild abandon and trust that
Mhm.
He's going to take care of it.
Mhm. I think what you've come up with is in the schools, it's called an individualized, evaluation plan, an IEP. But you're meeting the individuals where they are. And it's something of, I think that is huge because you're absolutely right in that we forget the power that God has given each of us as individuals to be able to transform where we are, be it our family, be it our, neighborhood, our parish, the ministry we're involved with, or are responsible for leading. And we forget that if we do all of those good things, and people are going to go, "Ooh, why do you have 50 kids showing up at your event and they got three? What is it that you're doing?" And then people start to ask those questions. Um, that being said, what are your hopes for Catholic ministry professionals in the months and years ahead? Mm.
My dream for it, my hope for it is that it can be, we offer talks and parish talks, and I'm happy to go to a parish and give
Mhm,
a talk to do a mission. But my hope really is to work with teams. If you've got a team that is ready for this kind of renewal, I would love to do a workshop with your team, and then we can even use that to do a parish mission night to launch this new mission initiative. But my dream, and I'm doing that this summer at my diocese, is to offer conferences via the diocese through the diocese so that it can feed those Catholic ministry professionals who are hungry. So the diocese could bring me in and offer those workshop days because you might not be able to convince your pastor, and your entire parish team that this is a necessary thing, that this is going to be good for us, that we're going to experience more joy, we're going to experience more success in our ministry. But if you go to the diocese and say, hey, this is a great resource, it's been really fruitful for me, we'd love you to bring Catholic ministry
mhm,
professionals in and sponsor that because we have some, I know 10 other youth ministers that would love to come to this and it would transform their
mhm,
parish as well. That would be my dream, is to have that ongoing. And then we do ongoing strategy coaching and support. I'd love that to be once, twice a year coming in with that same group and saying, okay, where are we at now? How do we move that ball down the line? What's that next goalpost? What's that next marker that we can hit, that can help us to know that we're moving the mission forward so that, I love that. And one of the visualizations I put into the book is, if Jesus was to come in and say, I need you to move the mission forward, I need you to get something done in the next 90 days, you'd have
mhm,
to be really intentional about what is this next thing we're going to do? What are the
right,
conversations we need to have? What are the things we need to put on our calendar? And what is that clearly defined goal that we're trying to meet? And I just love making that relationship with Christ, his desire for fruit in our parishes, that tangible, that we can really really work on it. And that's my hope, my vision, my dream, is that more and more people who work in the church can experience the joy that comes with very intentionally, working with Jesus to grow the kingdom.
mhm. Oh, sounds awesome. I will be praying for that in particular. So I know that you come up against a lot of resistance as you're doing this work. But what has been the most challenging aspect of trying to do this work and share this message of ministry renewal with others?
Yeah, this particular message. Well, I think the things you would expect that's most
Mm-hmm.
challenging is, oh, that sounds awesome, and you hit on it before we talked. It sounds awesome, but I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
you know and so I really, I want people to know that you do have time if you set your work up the right way. And that's a
Right.
big part of the book, is how do I structure my day in a way that allows me to have time for the most important things. and
Mm-hmm.
and and I do think that that's the thing that gets in everybody's heads. I don't have the time. The other one is I don't have the resources. And the book's $9. It doesn't cost a
Mm-hmm.
lot. But there's other ways too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily. There's ways to design, the way you would bring us in for a retreat where it's participant paid, you can have those conversations ahead of time, even to say like, hey, next year I'd like to do X. Let's build it into the budget, and then those conversations become a part of it. I mean, there's nothing in your way except your own creativity, and so unfortunately, when we get stuck in that maintenance mode, we stop thinking creatively about how to solve the problems that are before us that are just a part of our ordinary path to sanctity. It's just a part of the life. But if we can kind of tap into the get over the idea that I have no power to do anything. Get over the idea that I don't have the ability to make this happen, and start thinking, no, but creatively, how can I solve this? Get
Mhm.
excited about the idea of doing something more, of doing that thing that you know is going to bear fruit, that you feel called to. We all have this. Everybody who's in ministry, who has some level of prayer life, has this desire in their heart that God has placed there, that they know this is something we need to do, and it breaks their heart that they don't have time to do it. Okay, well, grab onto that feeling and know that you can start to do that. It just has to be an intentional effort to do so. And when you do that little bit of front effort on the front side to organize things the way you do your ministry, on the other side, there's so much freedom. There's so much freedom. And so yeah, buy the book and encounter that you can create time and space for those more important parts of your ministry.
Mm, awesome. Um, how do you think this work has been helping you on your own journey towards holiness?
It's trust. It's trust.
Mm,
I'm the first to admit that I'm a sinner. I'm in need of redemption, and the more I have that tendency to want to try and stay small and humble, so that I don't want the attention. I'm prideful and I'm arrogant. And and I've always prayed that prayer, like, Lord, let me decrease so you can increase. So, for me, a big part of it has been um, my own anxiety is about being known and seen, because I have that imposter syndrome. I know I'm just a big fat sinner, and a fear of being noticed for that. And so
mhm,
my hope is that I know that God is building in me a reservoir of faith. He's challenging me to step out of the boat, to put that one foot in front of the other, and walk toward Him on the water, and that's what
mhm,
I'm seeking to do. But yeah, it's scary. I don't like yeah, it's scary for me.
mhm. I understand totally. I very much identify. So, what's been the one idea or habit or practice that's been key for you to be able to grow in that trust, to be able to continue to set aside that imposter syndrome and deal with those anxieties?
Mhm, mhm. Well, prayer
Mm-hmm.
is the obvious one. I guess prayer is the obvious one, but I I would say that beyond that obvious, the fact that I need to be grounded in prayer, and the other thing has been really going through the exercise of sitting down and saying, what is the thing God has called me to? And I believe He's called me to this. So I put that in front of me, and then I say, what is the minimum viable change? And this is in the book too. What is the smallest change that I can make? What is the one thing that I need to do that moves that call forward? And then I put that on my calendar,
Mm-hmm.
because then there's an accountability, and I have a group of friends that I meet with. Their mastermind. They keep me accountable. So even though I'm scared, if I break it down into small bite-sized pieces, I can do that next step,
Mm-hmm.
right? And usually that next step might be intimidating, but then you do it, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
done. And for me, like a really practical one, I know that I need a CRM to manage what I'm doing, right? If I really
Mm-hmm.
want this to grow, if I really want the word to get out there about the book, about the ministry, I need to be very intentional about cultivating the relationships that lead to that.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, it's really hard for me to do that in a spreadsheet, or if I've got 30 emails that are out there in the ether. It's hard to remember to follow up on all those. But if I
Mm-hmm.
have a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, that's designed to put those things in front of me as they need to be addressed, then I can just knock them off, and I can design that relationship intentionally so that I'm following up with people and making sure it's in front of me. That
Mm-hmm.
costs money.
Oh yeah.
And so then you're investing a certain amount into that, not knowing if there's going to be the return that you hope there is, and I think there's
Mm-hmm.
good evidence that there is. But that was a step. I need to start a CRM if I want to be very intentional about growing this ministry. And at that point, then I've made that decision. I've started it. So I mean, those are just little steps things that you have to learn because I don't know how to do CRMs,
Right.
but now it's okay. I have to learn it. Now I have to do
Hmm.
it, and I've purchased it. And now I'm putting stuff into it, and I'm trying to build out what that looks like to have really healthy relationships intentionally designed to grow the kingdom. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's my really long form answer to your simple question. But
No.
it's keeping in front of me the vision, the call that God has placed on my life, and then
Hmm.
looking at what is the next thing I need to do to keep myself accountable to moving forward. And then I schedule it and I tell my friends who keep me accountable and my wife, obviously, who keeps me
Hmm.
accountable.
Yeah. Now, what's the next best step? You're remembering your why. What's the next best step to get there? And then having a great group of friends in particular to hold us accountable. I believe the apostles did that too. So,
It's all in
um,
scripture. You just have to kind of
yeah,
extrapolate the lessons a little bit.
exactly. So one final little kind of fun question as we're finishing up, but what is one thing that people probably would not know about you?
Oh, geez. What's one thing that people probably would not know about me? Um, I am an avid Indiana Jones enthusiast.
Oh,
I
there
just
you
love it.
go.
I love it so much. And and when I need inspiration, a lot of times I think about what would my favorite adventurer do?
Mm.
I have a whip right over there with a couple other Indiana Jones paraphernalia on my shelf.
Awesome. That is awesome. Um, so I would be negligent if I did not ask and let you tell people where they could get in touch with you, learn more about the work that you're doing. Mm.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is catholicministryprofessionals.com. As well, if you're specifically interested in the book, you can go to catholicministryprofessionals.com/book.
Okay. Awesome. I will put that in the show notes. And so go ahead and make sure to check that out. And I'll tell you, just from our conversation, I've got all sorts of great resolutions for people. Especially like reading, books like Soul of the Apostolate. I actually did an audio online retreat in which I read through that for people day by day. But St. Francis Sales, Intro to the Devout Life, the fact of spending that time with your book, going and getting it and being able to go through that exercise of, you know, coming before Christ and saying, Lord, you want me to do something in 90 days. What am I going to do? And being able to do those exercises, would be absolutely phenomenal just to move yourself forward. Let alone your team or anyone else, but maybe you're in a situation where people are going to go, oh yeah, no, we need to get John to come in.
And
So
and I would be
I
happy to. And the other thing I'll just kind of dangle out there is I'm developing a Catholic Ministry Professionals planner that
mm,
takes all the ideas of the book, and it actually is the planner that would accompany the book, which includes a page for creating your own rule of life, a rule of
mm,
work, but then just the planner sheet that we talk about in the book, and it puts it all together with a calendar and the vision sheet, so you can actually take these ideas from prayer and discernment into action in your workday and helps you to manage all those pieces that can be really tough. So if anybody's interested and they're listening to this episode, just
mhm,
for your listeners, if they send me a message through
mhm,
catholicministryprofessionals.com and mention the planner, and I'll send you an advanced copy just to kind of take a look at and see if it helps
mhm.
you in your ministry.
I'll definitely be reaching out about that, myself. So,
Great.
always looking for great ways to be able to continue to grow and to do the best work we can in the Lord's vineyard. And on that note, I wanted to say thank you so much. Can't believe our time is already gone. It's been such a pleasure and a joy. John, any final words for anybody? Kind of last bit of wisdom that you want to share. Mhm.
Uh, just pray,
Mm,
pray, pray, make a plan, and then and lead, and you will be able to transform your parish through your work because you will have God at your side and at your back doing the moves for you.
uh, awesome. Definitely words to live by. And for everyone out there, know of my continued prayers for each and every one of you that you may be able to do whatever it takes so that together we can tell the master of death, not today. Thanks, everybody.